Welcome, insiders. This is breaking news because we have received important information from circles close to Moncloa Palace that is concerning. For months, almost 2 years, concern about the physical and mental health of the Prime Minister, Pedro Sánchez, has been a topic of debate in Spain, sometimes even a taboo subject. That does not justify incapacity, evil, or the despotic way of governing. It does not justify the amnesties, the pardons, or the lies. But something does exist. And we have discovered that beyond illnesses, there is an obsession, whether true or not, that is eating away at the health of the Prime Minister. According to our information from an absolutely reliable source, Pedro Sánchez is completely obsessed with the idea that someone has poisoned him, and he believes he knows who it was. PPN. Pedro Sánchez's obsession is a common topic discussed in the halls of the Moncloa Palace, where thousands of people work and rumors spread through all the rooms and buildings. Look, this obsession of Prime Minister Sánchez, which we're going to talk to you about, started in 2020, and it has to do with Venezuela, with the Cartel of the Suns. And with Hugo Carvajal, the intelligence chief who, as you know, was in Spain. Let me tell you, on March 3, 2020, the Council of Ministers of Spain, under the presidency of Pedro Sánchez, authorized the extradition of Polo Carvajal to the United States. At that time, he was missing. He was a wanted man. It was known that he was in Spain, but not where he was. He was accused of crimes such as arms trafficking and drug trafficking. And the Council of Ministers, Sánchez personally signed that order, as I said, in 2020. On July 19, 2023, the extradition of Hugo Carvajal took place. At night, for security reasons, as we've been told, and without even notifying his family, so they wouldn't tip off the cartel and interfere. Don't forget that the cartel he belonged to was one where Hugo Carvajal was one of its leaders. It also has tentacles in Spain. The day after that extradition, on the 20th, Hugo Carvajal appeared for the first time before a federal judge in New York. But between the signing of the extradition and the extradition itself, as you can see, 3 years went by. Of those, Hugo Carvajal, in and out of prison, was detained and spent 2 years and 3 months in various Spanish prisons, mainly in Extremera prison. There he wrote countless pages and papers by hand. Information that he left with his lawyers in handwritten form and gave to the judge in an attempt to stay in Spain and not be extradited. He never wanted to go to New York. In those documents, he specifies, for example, exactly where Rodriguez's gold mine is located. Zapatero identifies the names of ETA members of the Spanish terrorist group who were protected by Maduro's regime. Or he explains in detail how Podemos was financed, how Juan Carlos Monedero received suitcases full of money at the Melia Hotel in Caracas. He tells it all there on those pages. That was what Sánchez wanted to keep from being investigated, and that's why he sped up Carvajal's extradition. But the Cartel of the Suns didn't agree. They did everything possible. They tried to reach Hugo Carvajal in prison to get him out of there, and they couldn't do it. And the Cartel of the Suns, I've been told, doesn't forgive betrayal, not even the one Hugo Carvajal committed in New York. He's about to. Now he's just a couple of months away from explaining everything, not even the one Sánchez committed by handing him over to the United States. And from here, Pedro Sánchez's obsession begins. Someone informs the Spanish Prime Minister that the Cartel of the Suns has put a price on his head. The obsession keeps growing in him. Security at Moncloa is increased. He changes the teams that protect him, and now there are even members of private security. Not only the usual police and civil guard, the state bodyguards, but occasionally members of private security also participate. And interestingly, health problems start to appear. First, the cardiovascular problem that Miguel Ángel Pérez talked about in his exclusive for Libertad Digital. That was around the end of 2024, the beginning of 2025. We're talking about hardening of the arteries, which become narrower and increase the risk of a stroke, thrombosis, or an aneurysm. But later on, and as Miguel Ángel has also mentioned, he suffered from that serious, extremely serious prostate problem that's so frightening to talk about and that he seems to have overcome. But it's not just these two. In a year and a half, illnesses would affect other organs in his body, which has led to this severe weight loss. Well, Sanchez's obsession is that he has been poisoned. Whether or not there is a connection between the supposed threat from the Cartel of the Suns and his health problems has led him to believe that he is the victim of poisoning. That's why a year ago the medical staff at the Moncloa Palace was increased, something that had never been seen before. With Rajoy, there were 15 people involved, including medical professionals in that Moncloa medical team. With Sánchez, there are 30 personnel, including healthcare staff and civil guards assigned to the mobile ICU. The illness gets the better of him. Begoña Gómez herself, and this was reported by Miguel Ángel Pérez, asks that a doctor accompany him on each of his trips abroad. When there is a need to spend many hours outside the Moncloa complex, outside that security bubble, a doctor accompanies him wherever he goes. Whether it's a coincidence or not, Sánchez believes that something was done to him and he is obsessed with his health. He takes any sneeze as a serious problem. He's a hypochondriac like no one you've ever seen. In Moncloa, they even know about his obsessions with cleanliness, with viruses, mites, and bacteria. Working with him is sickening, people very close to him tell us. There are even some who think that he is clinging to his position like no other president has ever done, to maintain that bubble of security because he's the prime minister, and also to have that constant and private medical team wherever he goes. In his obsession, he thinks that outside of Moncloa, he's a dead man. His life, shielded by security and medical teams, doesn't bring him happiness, but it does calm the obsession and the terrible fear he has of being a target, of the Cartel of the Suns, whether it's true or not, whether it's just an obsession in his head or a reality. The truth is, gentlemen, and we repeat it again, Pedro Sánchez is not in any condition to continue as Prime Minister. He is, however, fit to answer before a judge, I hope sooner rather than later, for all the alleged crimes he has committed, which are many, some resulting in death over the last 7 years. But any doctor who treats him would be the ideal candidate to take the first step, to prepare a physical and psychological report that would disqualify him before the government of Spain. The head of state should be the first to be informed of this situation, and to call the leaders of the different political parties in Spain to ask for their opinion and suggest a new candidate for the presidency. It's curious because the Constitution never contemplated that this could happen. And if the Prime Minister doesn't want to, there's no law that explicitly regulates removing him from office except for that medical report that declares him unfit. Therefore, the first step must be taken by one of the doctors, whether at Ramon y Cajal or at the Moncloa Palace, who considers that his condition is incompatible with governing a country. Until now, we knew he was a bad prime minister, that he had reached Moncloa through deceit, that he had even cheated to become the general secretary of his party. We knew he couldn't be trusted, that he lied, that he did the opposite of what he said, that he is a risk to the rule of law. Now we also know that he is obsessed, that he lives in a bubble of terror and fear, which should prevent him from remaining in the Moncloa Palace for even one more day.
Bienvenidos. Investigamos.
Castillón Confidencial by Albert Castillón.